Project 3, Crashing. This presentation is about shortening the duration of projects. Two of the ways we do this are crashing and fast tracking. We'll spend most of our time talking about crashing. Crashing speeds up activities and increases the cost. Fast tracking activities, normally done in sequence, and does them at the same time. This increases risk. Crashing causes certain activities to be sped up. The activities we shorten must be on the critical path. We always start with the least expensive activities first. We begin by asking some what-if questions. How fast can the project be completed? To crash the project one day, what would I crash and what would it cost? To crash the project 2 days, what activities would be crashed and what would it be its cost in total? We begin by arranging the activities into paths based on precedents. In this project, the paths have already been selected. We use the enumeration method to determine the critical path. ABEG, ACEG, ACFG, and ADFG. We look for the longest path, and that one is the critical path. But what if the paths aren't provided? We're going to find the paths using and building a network. If we know the duration and predecessors of our activities, we can create a network diagram. First, we begin at the end and work toward the beginning. Look at the table on the left. G is the last activity. E and F are its predecessors. Next comes F. C and D are its predecessors. Then comes E. B and C are its predecessors. And the predecessor for B, C, and D is A. But there's another way to build a network flowchart. You can use Project Libre. Just enter the activity, duration, and predecessor information into the Gantt chart. A clear representation of the data can be found by clicking on the Network button and reviewing the network diagram. Like this. The network feature arranges the activities into paths based on duration and predecessors. This is the information we will use to crash our project. In this example, the activities are listed alphabetically. Critical paths identified by the yellow arrows. Activities A and C cannot be crashed for some reason, so they're crossed out. As we totally crash activities, we'll cross each one of them out. We can now begin crashing the project. But first, some definitions. Normal time and normal cost are the activity duration and cost if no crash occurs. Crash time is the length of the activity if it is totally crashed. Crash cost is the total cost of an activity if it is completely crashed. Crash cost per day is the cost added to the normal cost after each iteration of crashing. A crashing example using activity B. As you can see, a normal time for B is 8, and it can be crashed down to 5 days. That's 3 days sooner, not 5 days sooner. The normal time for activity B will cost us $250. If we crash it 1 day, it'll cost us $50 plus the $250, so 1 day's crashing will cost us $300 total, and so forth, out to the last one, bring us the cost of $400. We crash for 3 days, and we go from $250 to $400. Round 1. We begin with the least expensive option on the critical path. Activity B is the cheapest at $50 per day. We'll crash our project down to 24 days. we find every path with activity B on it. There's only one. The normal time for activity 8 for activity is 8 days. We crash it by 1 day to 7 days. The critical path changes, and we now have two critical paths, A, B, E, G, and A, D, F, G. Move the other path durations over. Round 2. We're going to crash the project down to 23 days. As before, we crash the critical path or paths. The least expensive activity in path A, B, E, G on the top is again activity B. Least expensive activity in path A, D, F, G on the bottom is activity F. Crashing F in path A, D, F, G will also affect path A, C, F, G. We begin by crashing activity B in path A, B, E, G. The duration of B crashes down to 6 days, and the path is decreased to 23 days. Next, we crash path F in paths A, D, F, G, and A, C, F, G. The duration of F crashes down to 3 days, while the critical path ADFG crashes to 23 days, and path ACFG crashes down to 19 days. Although this is our intent to crash the critical path, ACFG comes along for the ride. Path ACEG stays at 19. Now both critical paths are crashed to 23 days, and the other paths are crashed down to 19 days. Activity F is totally crashed, and so we line it out. Round 3. We're going to crash the project down to 22 days. As before, we crash the critical paths. Least expensive activity in path ABEG is again activity B. Least expensive activity in path ADFG is activity D, because activity F is totally crashed, A cannot be crashed, and G is too expensive. We begin by crashing activity B in path ABEG. The duration crashes down to 5 days, and the critical path crashes down to 22 days. Next we move to ADFG. This duration crashes down to 5 days, and our critical path crashes down to 22 days. Paths ACEG and ACFG stay at 19 days. Activity B is totally crashed, and so we line it out. Round 4. We're going to crash the project down to 21 days. As before, we crash the critical paths. Least expensive activity in path ABEG is activity G. It's also the only one left that is crashable. Least expensive activity in path ADFG is actually E. Because both critical paths contain activity G, it's cheaper to use G to crash them both. G will affect all 4 paths. The duration of G crashes down to 8 days, and every path is decreased by 1. Critical paths ABEG and ADFG crash down to 21 days. Paths ACEG and ACFG crash to 18 days. Activity G is totally crashed, and so we cross it off. Round 5. We're going to crash the project down to 20 days. As before, we crash the critical paths. There are no crashable activities common to both critical paths. The only option in path ABEG is activity E. The only option in path DFG is activity D. We start with D because it's the least expensive in any critical path. The duration of D crashes down to 4 days, and path ADFG crashes to 20 days. The duration of E crashes down to 2 days, and path ADFG crashes down to 20 days. Activity E is totally crashed, and so we cross it off. The project is totally crashed down to 20 days. What about activity D? It still has one more crashable day, and it could shorten one of the critical paths. Reducing ADEG to 19 days would still leave us with critical path ABEG at 20 days, cost another $100, and not shorten the project. So there's no point in crashing ADEG. The project is totally crashed. No crashable activities that affect the critical path remain, or crashing has become too costly. Project duration is reduced by 5 days and is $725 more expensive. This very busy slide shows some charts used in the crashing project we just finished, and some charts I think will help you with Project 3 crashing. We've already used the charts outlined in red. They contain the data we used to crash the project. The charts outlined in green will help you with the crashing assignment. The chart in the upper right corner contains all the same information as the chart to its left, plus predecessor information for each activity. You'll need this information to create a network flowchart and build your project's path. You can build your network by hand or plug the data into Project Libre. The large chart in the center is the format for your crashing project. It puts all the crashing information in one place. See where the information goes and compare this chart with the crashing information on the other charts. A PowerPoint presentation of this information is available as a handout on my UM. Let me know if I can do anything to help you. Good luck.